Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Another Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies.
They're dropping like flies.
Listen, people are dropping like flies out there.
I am
Boop.
pissed off.
We're dropping like flies around here.
We're dropping like flies here. Jeez, sir, 2 more just went down. Dropping like flies.
Too many people around here been dropping like flies already, and where's that getting us, huh? Nowhere. Fast.
Biden's being Biden's being extremist.
Crush that fly.
There seems to be a semi-Jamie Foxx update. And with each update, there seems to be more and more evidence supporting that he's really effed up in some way. And if they're remaining silent, then it's probably something to do with the boop. Jamie Foxx, they cloned Tyrone. Co-stars addresses medical emergency at the red carpet premiere. Jamie Foxx colleagues in his new film, The Clone Tyrone, voice a chorus of well-wishers of supporters sending their love amid health battle. So they said that he was playing pickleball, right? But I wish Jamie all the recovery and healing, various co-stars, and yet he didn't show up to his premiere. Jamie Foxx receives love from the Clone Tyrone co-stars as he skips premiere. And so if he's playing pickleball, he's probably can go and sit and watch a movie, right? But if he's blind, and if he's paralyzed, it's a different story. So those co-stars are all the Clone Tyrone trailer. Jamie Foxx and John Boyega join forces in Netflix science fiction mystery. I think I saw one of the trailers before. There's Jamie Foxx in an elevator. Of course, elevators take you to hell and staircases take you to heaven. That's the way they work that out. But Jamie Foxx is still, MIA. There he is here. He posted this. It's about to go down. The Clone Tyrone coming July 21st only on Netflix. And they have the trailer here. I'll pause that because Netflix sucks about copyright stuff. So there's that. Ammonia in beef. Cooking oil now sprayed with ammonia. So that happened. So this guy, Alaska Republican David Eastman, said this.
In the case where child abuse is fatal, obviously it's not good for the child, but it's actually a benefit to society because there aren't needed for government services and whatnot over the whole course of that child's life.
Through the chair, can you say that again? Did you say a benefit for society?
Talking dollars. Now you've got
Yes.
a $1.5 million price tag here for victims of fatal child abuse. It gets argued periodically that it's actually a cost savings because that child is not going to need any of those government services that they might otherwise be entitled to receive and need based on, growing up in this type of environment.
Through the chair, Representative, I guess that would be the idea, if I can use a really bad analogy, when you hit somebody, always back up because it's cheaper to insurance. I don't pertain to that, and I'm really, I'm not even sure how to answer that there's a cost saving to the death of a child. The impact that has on a family and us as a society when a child is lost, especially to child abuse and neglect, is unmeasurable.
All right, so this guy, you heard it. I don't need to say anything. Alaskan Republican David Eastman said, it's not good for the child if the abuse actually kills them, obviously. But it's good for society, at least in terms of dollars and cents. And that child isn't going to be wrecked. And, there's, I'm not certainly agreeing what he said because it's effed up that he said it like that. But, there's some truth in it because kids who are sexually abused are wrecked in different ways and broken. And so, they often contribute to, not all of them. Some of them cope. Like some of them pull themselves out of it. Some of them become productive members. It depends on the severity of the abuse. There's lots of factors. And of course, you don't wish anybody to be, killed in that fashion, obviously. But it does become a repetitive pattern where, children who are abused and sexually abused, physically abused, emotionally abused, will go on to abuse other people. But, you don't hope for death. Like, that's not the solution. Oh, it's be better if you just died already, because you're going to be a burden on society. So it's, something, it's a weird way the guy put it, right? It's just, heartless. And, the truth of it is that it's a cyclical behavior, and it's like a disease, a virus that's passed from one generation to the next. One of my viewers sent me this nefarious. One day of his scheduled execution, a convicted serial killer gets psychiatric evaluation during which he claims he's a demon, and further claims that before their time is over, the psychiatrist will commit 3 murders of his own. So that sounds like a cheery movie. U.S. making plans to evacuate citizens from Taiwan. Well, that would be problematic and kind of an act of war. Gangsta booze cause of death revealed. Accidental overdose of fentanyl, cocaine, and alcohol. This is Jane Fallon is Ricky Gervais' girlfriend, and she had a goodbye thing on my face. You tried to hide under a freckle, but now you've grown into something potentially more worrying, i.e. skin cancer. You have to go. Don't you dare leave a scar. One of my viewers sent me an article from the Daily Mail saying that she was crying, so I thought this was a video. And then they said a teary-eyed Jane Fallon, and I'm like, I don't know if she's teary-eyed, right? I don't know if she's really all that upset about it, but that's the Daily Mail for you. Speaking of which, synthetic embryos are created in the lab with no egg or sperm. Scientists announced historic breakthrough carrying hopes for new treatment for miscarriages and rare genetic disorders, but development poses huge ethical dilemmas. Don't they watch science fiction movies? Like we already know how these things are going to end, right? So Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who I'm not endorsing, but at least he's against the boop, and he's running against the boop. This is called Truth. What is it? It's called RFK Jr. running on Truth.
We're going to do a mass experiment, a new kind of mass experiment of what happens when you tell people the truth and see what happens. My job is to tell people the truth, and if the Americans have an appetite for that, that I will be president.
This is a time to bring America back together. We have been torn apart, and if anyone can bring it back together, it's the Kennedys.
Are you frickin' serious? Like, what are you talking about?
I hope that what he can do is to break through by just being himself, being his honest self, very selfless, very focused on doing the right thing, and hopefully people will be able to see that. But we are absolutely up against a major media wall.
Okay, so when I was taping this, my microphone batteries went dead, which happens occasionally, and it sucks when it does. And so I can go and redo it, or I can do the voiceover in Premiere Pro, or just do something in Adobe Audition, which is the easiest thing for me, and that's what I'm doing most of this with, just to recreate what I said. So there's a comment from Alec Baldwin, which is interesting. I'll get to that in a moment. But first... my wife and I were talking about this. We watched the Plumbers, White House, the Watergate plumbers, right? And it was mostly a comedy about the lower level people involved in the White House break-in. So there was something that one of the other movie channels did, one of the other paid channels did on the White House. It was mostly about Howard Dean. It centered around Howard Dean. And then there was that podcast that became a documentary that was about Watergate that was very popular. And there's maybe something else that was out there, right? Watergate has become a thing, especially to do with Trump and the impeachment and all those things. Nixon. And there's been more shows about this. So my wife and I were starting to watch it. I'm like, at the beginning, it didn't seem very funny. Woody Harrelson was playing E. Howard Hunt, and it was mostly about Howard Hunt and his relationship with Gordon Liddy, who was featured heavily in the other movie, but the other like mini-series thing that we watched. But it was really funny and well done. Like as we watched, it was HBO, so it was, one of those, HBO has at least high production values. They put out quality product. But I learned a few things that they hadn't covered in the other, in the docuseries and the other TV show. And again, I was like, do I really need to watch something else on Watergate? But we were watching it, and my wife and I were like, it's pretty good. So it was only 5 episodes. It was, 5 hours. And aside from being funny, like there was 4 break-ins. They tried to break into Watergate 4 times. These putzes, right? There was a level of incompetence. But there was some other bombshell kind of things. Like, again, this is spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, but Howard Hunt's wife died in a plane crash. And the way they framed the narrative, it was pretty clear that she was murdered. But more than that was Howard Hunt was involved in Bay of Pigs, and, they hired these guys who were Cubans to break into Watergate who were involved in the Bay of Pigs. And, there's a failure there with Howard Hunt and the Bay of Pigs. And there was some, they kept on coming back to Kennedy's assassination. At the end of the show, they said Howard Hunt confessed to Kennedy's murder, but then they said maybe he didn't. But there was references to it all along. And he was basically involved in the assassination of Kennedy. That's what they were implying. Of course, there was a Cuban connection there as well, if you've looked at any of the other information about, of course, the CIA. And my wife was telling me that Robert Kennedy has said this, himself, right? This is his father. He's another Bobby Kennedy, right? Jack and, John F. Kennedy and Bobby, the same name. Like they keep on recycling the names of the Kennedys. But he has said this in these headlines here. Robert Kennedy Jr. sees overwhelming evidence CIA involved in JFK assassination. And this one from the New York Post. Robert Kennedy Jr. blames CIA for JFK assassination, fueling controversial claims. And so this is from JFK records reveal intense level of secrecy by CIA during investigation of assassination. And so this is, come out in various ways. But then, there's this comment I want to get to with Alec Baldwin says, Alec Baldwin, you've got to admit he's compelling and his philosophy of government is refreshing. Most of these candidates have none. So Alec Baldwin is, seems to be a pro-Kennedy guy, which, who knows? Like he's maybe just crapping on Biden because he has no real vision. This is Alec's Instagram page. He's got, I haven't seen this in a while. He stopped posting, ran serious sitting on the toilet as Trump. It says from You Can't Spell America Without Me, written by Kurt Anderson, with a line or two from yours truly. I don't know. Like, what are you doing here, Alec? This has got you in trouble in the first place. Okay, so one of my viewers sent me this. It is from this terror alum, and it says, breaking criminal Putin says he will start using depleted uranium shells in Ukraine. Depleted uranium is a toxic chemical as opposed to the radiation hazard particles in aerosols, can be inhaled or ingested, and can even enter the bloodstream and cause kidney damage. Now that's This guy knows nothing about depleted uranium. And then it says this, breaking U.S. to finally approve depleted uranium tank rounds for Ukraine. Depleted uranium is a non-toxic and is used in weapons because it can penetrate tanks and armor more easily due to its density and other physical properties. Again, this is the same person posting, it's a check mark, somebody who's maybe got a following on Twitter, and, you know, hypocritically posting two entirely different, I mean, this is how, you know, political shill stuff, right? And what he doesn't say here or doesn't know is depleted uranium is what's left over when they use uranium in nuclear power plants. And so at some point, there isn't enough radioactive material in it. It just wears out, right? It's, you know, it's when it's like a battery dies, right? But it's still radioactive, and will have a radioactive half-life for like 2 to 4 billion years. And so it's effed up that we're even creating something when the best containers we have, like plastic containers, will only last 10,000, right? There's nothing that lasts even 100,000 years. And this stuff's going to be radioactive and deadly to creatures and people, and for, you know, like ever, right? I mean, 4 billion years. And it's just going to be sitting in the ground, going to the environment, creating dead zones. And we're producing a ton of it because we have all these radioactive nuclear power plants, and there's all this depleted uranium coming out of it. And so they started using it in concrete floors as like a substitute for rebar, because it, you know, has similar properties to rebar, you know, bonding. It helps to bond to the concrete and strengthen the concrete. But that makes these buildings with a, you know, low level doses of radiation for people living there, and they're going to get sick and we'll never know why, right? Like, unless they buy a Geiger counter, and even then they won't figure out some, you know, sociopath put depleted uranium in the foundation of the building. But they also use it in tank shells because it burns so hot. When they fire the shell into a tank, it can burn a hole like right in the tank, right? From the heat. It burns at like 10,000 degrees or something crazy. And so they were using it in Fallujah in Iraq, and you can Google birth defects in Fallujah and see the effects. I mean, these monstrous kids, these kids who are, you know, mutated by all this depleted uranium that got saturated in their area. And some of the shells don't fire, you know, they end up being duds, and they're just sitting there with depleted uranium in them, and kids are playing on them. I mean, there's all these things. And you can look this up. It's all been documented. And it used to be a war crime, and it's one of the worst things you could do, right? And this guy is hammering Putin for using it on one hand, and then, you know, applauding Biden on the other, and just shows you the hypocrisy here. And it's, you know, it's just not human. I mean, the stuff's just, it shouldn't even exist. If you're going to make a, you know, toxic byproduct that's radioactive and who knows what other, I mean, this is not a healthy, it's going to kill things, it's going to hurt things, not just people, but whatever, the environment. And you are making a toxic byproduct of your, you know, in this case, electricity, and it's going to be radioactive for 4 billion years. You know, like, you shouldn't do that. Like, that's all right. We can't do that, right? Like, if you're going to make a mess and your mess is going to last for 4 billion years, you don't do whatever you're going to do, right? Like, most things will be able to be cleaned up, even plastics and things break down into the environment after 10,000 years. But, you know, radioactive depleted uranium takes 4 billion, and, you know, God knows what other things are coming out of that stuff, right? It's, you know, like a horror movie. But anyways. Okay, so the headline, the comment here, I hope the guard having a medical emergency did not ruin your picture. The photo opportunity. So it starts off here. So this guy's passing out, right? He's effed right here, like he's going down, he's dropping like flies, he's dying. These guys walk up here, these politicians walk right by this guy, right? He's like, he's gone, like he's like, you know, gone. These guys completely ignoring him. This guy's from France or something, I don't know. Spain maybe. And then this guy's dying over here, and they're getting the photo op in. Get out of it. Stop photobombing it, you punk, right? Stop photobombing these important people's photos. Look at they're shaking hands here, smiling. This guy, look at his fake smiles. This guy's dying over here. A little wave. Other people coming in. Get that guy out of here. He's photobombing us. He's making our photo op. Like, I mean, this is just wonderful. Like, this is like almost as good as the greatest Pelican ever. Human body parts from Harvard morgue sold and shipped by managers. Manager Fed says.
Some of the details here really are unbelievable. Prosecutors say that the illegal sales from the morgue here went on for at least 5 years.
Why stop then? Like, you would have gone back 10 years. Like, when did he start here?
Prosecutors say a morgue at Harvard became a macabre marketplace for heads, brains, skin, bones, and other body parts. The accused grisly shopkeeper, morgue manager Cedric Lodge.
He's got the paper up here trying to...
Would you give anyone access to that?
You got to hold it close to your face, dude.
More.
He walked past reporters after facing a judge today. His wife, Denise,
she's doing a better job. Denise is getting it done here.
Was also silent. Investigators say she helped him sell stolen remains out of their New Hampshire home.
Denise!
No comment. Katrina McLean was one of the buyers, prosecutors say, accused of purchasing 2 dissected faces for $600.
Wow, what a bargain. It's a bargain. U.S. Olympic ski jumper Patrick Gasienska, dead at 24. I haven't been covering these young athletes dying or people dying. People aren't sending me this as much, and I'm not looking for it as much because we know what's happening. It might, I don't know if it's gone up or more. Says he died Monday night, but cause of death was not released. So it's another athlete, ski jumper and snowboarder, and dead at 24.
Now to a crime on camera in Miami Gardens. Police investigating a robbery at a cell phone repair shop.
And that suspect put actually a box over his head to conceal.
There's a box.
His identity. Local 10 crime specialist Bridget Matter with more.
It's not something you see every day. The disguise this guy decided to use was a box, and this is the actual box used.
There's a box.
And what you'll see in this video is this was not a foolproof disguise because it fell off.
Wait, a box over the head? Is it a foolproof disguise? My world is blown.
And that's what helped police track him down.
This guy
He does a little smash and grab.
Is using an old-fashioned cardboard box to conceal his identity during a smash and grab. After breaking the glass counter, he stuffs his bag with merchandise.
Look at him go. Look at that box guy go.
From a cell phone repair kiosk in Miami Gardens. But the box fell off. Miami Gardens. But the box fell off, giving police a clear look at their suspect. 30.
Oh, he had one of these too. And an Illuminati pyramid at his eye, and his third eye. Easily identifiable once he knocked that box off. That was fantastic. Students revolt against Pride Month Spirit Day at Massachusetts school. Glare at teachers, tear down signs, wear red, white, and blue, chant USA are my pronouns. There's more and more of this happening where there's animosity. Let me switch over to the voiceover here. Okay, so first you have to establish one thing, that the people pushing this and using force, and this is not about the, gay rights or bullying of gay people or any of these things, right? I'm using this as an example how when you use force, there's a backlash. And the backlash doesn't come to the people who are pushing this. Like, who knows who is pushing this agenda? There might be some gay people involved, but not all gay people are wanting this to be forced on kids and, families and teachers and things like this. And, all across the internet, right? They keep on forcing this on people. They are making this mandatory. These kids have to sit through and be indoctrinated with whatever they're they're selling here, right? And when you force something, and I say this all the time, whenever there's a force, there's a counterforce, and you can see it in every aspect of your life, right? Especially in America. Somebody says you can't do something and you immediately want to do it. Like America has this irreverence for authority and being told you can't do something. Even like, when someone says, there's two ways of saying you can't do something. There's you can't do something because it's against the rule, or you can't do something because you're not able to. You don't have it in you to accomplish it. You're going to fail, right? Like I dated this woman who was a nurse, and her stepdad told her that she'd never become a nurse, and she used that as motivation to push through and, get her whatever it is, education and things like that, right? You see this happening all the time. And when you force an agenda on people, especially when they don't like it, there is a counterforce that is released. And that counterforce often makes things worse. And I said this about all this stuff to do with pride and, all these other things. It's going to come back on the gay community, right? It's just, that's how it's going to be. And I'm not, endorsing that. I'm saying that's just inevitable. But the people who are pushing this, who knows what their agenda is, right? Just like the BLM movement, a lot of white people and liberals were pushing that, right? And the backlash wasn't at the, white people. It's going to be at the people who, if you're forcing something on a group of people and you're saying, no, you have to, let's say you bring a new kid into the class, right? Or there's a classroom of students and you favor one kid and you make him the teacher's pet. Or you do this with your kids. Let's say you have, 4 kids and you favor one of them and you rub that kid in the other kid's face. Why can't you be like Johnny, right? And you say, you guys got to treat Johnny better and you guys have to look up to Johnny and Johnny gets special privileges. The other kids are going to hate Johnny and Johnny might not want it, but Johnny might not want his mom to do that, right? Or the teacher or whatever it is. And so when you force something like this and you favor one side over another and people on the other side start resenting the other, the favored group. It's the worst way to do something, especially when force is used. There's an immediate backlash, and you see it all over the place. People are, not buying Bud Light, all these things, and then it becomes, instead of gaining more respect and gaining more equality or whatever you're trying to, do for the gay community, you have the opposite effect, where people who were neutral or didn't, have an opinion or was, they had favorable relationships with people in the gay community, all of a sudden now feel like it's us against them, right? And with the, the numbers being, 10% of America, falls on like a gay spectrum. That means 90% don't. That's, those are overwhelming numbers of people who end up being resentful. And, Dave Chappelle joked about this, how the trans community had jumped right over the black community in terms of getting support and, having all these rules and regulations and things that, they had been trying to get for years as a targeted group, as some kind of marginalized group. And so then that becomes a battle, like even within the gay community, like the trans aspect of the gay community getting more attention and getting more, whatever it is. And then, some other group, the lesbians or the, some other group in the gay community getting mad and saying, why are they getting, all this attention and, they're getting all this love and we're not, right? This is just natural human behavior. And again, like it might be, some of it might be LGBTQ lobbyists, but some of it's just coming from an agenda. It could be, CIA agenda. It's a way to divide and conquer. They're doing this on purpose. They know what they're doing, right? They're pitting people against each other and they're pushing Americans. They're pushing the right hard now, right? With Trump arrest and, the right thinks that they're being, the right is completely triggered and they keep on doing things to provoke the right and they want a reaction, right? And the groups that they're serving up so that they'll be the, because people on the right are looking at the groups themselves, the people, instead of looking at the power or the people who are making this agenda happening, right? That are pushing and forcing this agenda. And, you know, all these other things. And then they look at Trump and say, well, Trump will solve it and he won't, you know, that whole thing. But they're using force for a reason. They're pushing agenda because they want to create division, they want to create hostility, and they're doing a good job. Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano definitely pouring for the apocalypse and the ascension. And everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.